today we're actually talking about um, one of the fields that I personally love to talk about is when it comes to things like where Muslims talk about the corrupted text of the Bible. And so today we're just pretty much, corrupted.
Corrupted, yeah.
Yeah. So today that we're actually covering over that specifically. And you guys know who I am, and if you want to introduce yourself, I won't.
Yeah, for sure.
Go ahead and give your bio. It's all good.
Yeah. Hey guys, what's going on? So this is the Amen Podcast. I have a channel here on YouTube where I do polemics against Islam and I do apologetics for the gospel, so defending the gospel. Pretty active on Clubhouse a lot, active here on YouTube. Started on TikTok. Had to get off of it because it's a flaming dumpster fire. So now I'm here with my buddy Hunter and we're doing this live stream. So he's going to kind of tackle some of the biblical stuff about textual variants and things like that. And I guess what Muslims will use to chest dump as a contradiction, quote unquote. So he's going to give a really good explanation of that. And I'll kind of give like a brief synopsis of like what Muslims believe according to whatever they think the Quran says. So kind of like the Islamic view about biblical corruption. So yeah.
Yeah. So what is the Quranic view or the Islamic view of biblical corruption? Like we talked about, like contradictions, things like that, but
Mhm.
really sometimes when it comes to that, it's like they talk about more than just that. And
Right.
so what, like, you want to start off with like some like verses or something like that to where they get this
Yeah.
from, things like that? Because I know from the Quran it claims to like people follow nothing but like conjecture or something like
Mhm.
that. And
There.
it's yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So I'll give you one that they'll use sometimes. Just like I said, I'll try to be as brief as possible because there's not really much to say because what they'll do is they'll build on stuff and kind of just come up with their own ideas. I don't know if you can share screen on here, but can you go to Quran.com
Yeah.
and go to Surah um, 3, verse 78?
Yep. Let's see. Three. No, I never. Oh, there it is. Three. I think I'm in three.
Mhm.
You can tell I never use this. So three verse. Oh, there we go. Okay.
Yeah.
Let me get
And sorry if
78.
my lighting keeps going in and out. I don't know what it is. It's something weird with my camera, but the audio should be pretty good.
No, that's okay. Let me share screen. There it is. Okay. So there's
All
that.
right. Yeah. So, sir, 3 verse 78. Can you zoom in a bit when you get to it?
Yeah, I can try. Hang on. Actually, I can make it to where. Let me see if I can. Whoop. There. Does that work better?
Cool. Yeah, that's cool.
You said verse 78.
Yep.
Verse
Actually,
7.
you know what? Start at 76.
Okay. Do you want me to read it?
Yeah, actually, if you don't mind.
Okay, yeah. So 376. Absolutely, those who honor their trust and shun evil, surely Allah loves those who are mindful of Him. Indeed, those who trade Allah's covenants and their oaths for a fleeting gain will have no share in the hereafter.
Mhm.
Allah will neither speak to them, nor look at them, nor purify them on the day of judgment, and they will suffer painful punishment. Verse 78. There are some among them who distort the book with their tongues to make you think this distortion is from the book, but it is not what the book says. They say it is from Allah, but it is not from Allah, and so they attribute lies to Allah knowingly.
Right. So before we even get into the tafsir for this, we're gonna go into Ibn Kathir. But before we even get into that, what they'll do is they'll point to this, they'll point to some verses in Surah Al-Baqarah, that's chapter 2. They'll point to a lot of stuff and they'll say, hey, the Quran says that your book is corrupt. Like when it's talking about the people of the book, the Ahl Kitab, which is the Jews and the Christians, they'll say those people, yeah, your book is corrupt. However, when you're actually reading it in context, it says things like, they twist the book with their tongues, right? It doesn't say that the actual book is corrupt. It just says that they twist it with their tongues. So, for instance, what they'll do is they'll point that and say, "Hey, look, when you actually think about it, how would you even know that something is twisted? How would you even know that something is corrupt unless you have the original with you, right?" So this is why when you go to verses like Surah 2, verse 101, I'm thinking off the top of my head, but I believe it says like Mustajikun lima ma'ahum, which is like, confirming the book or confirming what they had with them. There's other verses, um Masojikun lima baina yadehi, confirming what they have between their hands. So the Quran takes this position of the book, the kitab that was given to Isa and to Musa. Uh, those books are still intact, and what people are doing is they're corrupting them by twisting what it actually says.
Mm.
So if you don't mind, could you go back to Quran.com, and I want to look at the tafsir for that actual ayah.
Yeah. Let me get it real quick. Let me get it
Mhm.
back. Share screen.
I don't know what's up with my screen, man. It keeps going in and out like that. That's
Nah,
weird.
that's okay. All right, cool. So there's that. Is it better when I do it like this?
Yeah, can you zoom in a little bit? Are you on a
Yeah.
Mac,
No, I am on a uh
PC?
HP. Yeah.
Okay, if you hold Command and then press the plus button, it should zoom in a bit.
You
I
mean
think,
control?
or yeah, Control. I'm sorry.
Hey, look at there.
Yeah, you Android people.
I'm actually an iPhone guy. Like I'm
Your iPhone
Apple.
guy.
Yeah.
So what happened, man? What's going on?
Man, I had to get a computer, so I had to make things work.
There's a website called Newegg,
Hmm.
newegg.com, that gives you can buy refurbished Macs for like dirt cheap. But
Okay.
if you so you see where it says Surah 3 for 78, there's
Uh,
a
yeah.
there's a book icon right underneath the play icon. Yeah, click on that
Okay.
and scroll down. So this is Tafsir Ibn Kathir. Keep scrolling a bit. Okay, right there. So it says those who distort the book with their tongues.
Yep.
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and read that really quick. So it's talking about this part of the ayah. So who distort the book with their tongues means they alter them, Allah's words, right? So they're altering the word, they're not actually corrupting the actual book, right?
Yeah.
So it says Al Bukhari reported that Ibn Abbas said that the ayah means that they alter and add. Now, look what it says. Although none among Allah's creation can remove the words of Allah from his books, they alter and distort their apparent meanings. Then it says, Wahib
Mm.
bin Manabih said, the Torah and the Injil remain as Allah revealed them, and no letter in them was removed. Now, notice what it says. However, the people misguide others by addition and false interpretation, relying on books that they wrote themselves. Now we're
Mm.
not going to read the whole tafsir, but I'll land with this. When you go through this tafsir, there are sections where it talks about how like the Christians at that time were writing books in Arabic, and the translations were horrible, and they added things or they subtracted things. Or what they'll do is like if you continue to go down, it talks about like the can't think of the word off the top of my head, but in Arabic, it's been a long day, but it's like the mafus, like the guarded tablets. It says like if even though like Allah has them on guarded tablets, when you actually matter of fact, if you don't mind, can you go down so we can look at it? Because I don't want
Yeah.
to.
Yeah. This is the end of it right here.
Okay, yeah, yeah. So I'll just read this one and then I'll wrap it up. So it says, they say this is from Allah, but it's not from Allah. And this is what Ibn Kathir says about it. As for Allah's books, they are still preserved and cannot be changed. Ibn Abi Hatim recorded this statement. However, if Wahib meant the books that are currently in the hands of the people of the book, the Ahl Kitab, then we should state that there is no doubt that they are altered, distorted, added to, and deleted from them. Now notice
Interesting.
what now notice what he's getting ready to say after this. Remember?
Yeah.
So before, what he was saying was it was the translations. No one, he said, no one can change any letter from his books, the Torah and the Injil. You can't do it. It's not possible. Now, notice what he says. If we keep reading, he says, for instance, the Arabic versions of these books contain tremendous error, right? Many
Mm.
additions and deletions and enormous misinterpretations. What are they, though? They're the translations, right? If you keep reading, it says, can you move up, scroll up just a little bit?
That's the furthest to go. I can zoom in more though.
Well, no, the my okay, yeah, yeah, because my part
Yeah.
of the camera is like over it. It says, those who rendered these translations, notice again, translations. Those who rendered these translations have incorrect comprehension in most, rather, all of these translations. So he's saying not even just some, all of them. But notice what they are, the translations, not the originals.
Mm.
If Wahid meant the books of Allah that he has with him, then indeed these books are preserved and will never change. So what they'll do is they'll go to the top of this paragraph and say, oh, well, these are the ones that are preserved on the guarded tablets or something. Well, I mean, that's not even what this is specifically talking about. He's talking about if Wahib meant the books of Allah that he has with him, that Wahib has with him, the untranslated versions, those are preserved and were never changed. If they want to say that these are the mahfuz, like those guarded tablets, the problem with that is no one can read them.
So with the like guarded tablets, that's
Mhm.
not. Is that like a thing like with Joseph Smith or something, like with the golden tablets or something?
So the Muslims believe that this the speech of the Quran is eternal.
Hmm.
Um, so essentially, you can kind of see where they get this from because even in the Quran, Isa is called the kalimatu hu Allah wa ruh min Allah, which is like a word from Allah and a spirit from Him. They don't associate they won't associate Isa with like the actual eternal speech of Allah, but you can see where they get these ideas from. They steal it from the Christians, right?
Mm.
But essentially, what's going on here is they'll take this eternal speech of Allah and they'll say that's what's guarded on the tablets, but that's not what's actually like, it's not the same thing as like what the Christians think. So the eternal speech of Allah is eternal, but it is not Allah. So it's eternal with Allah, but not. So now they have an issue because now you have two eternal beings.
Mm.
You see what I'm saying? It gets really
Yeah.
weird.
No, that is
That's what they
interesting.
believe it is. Yeah.
No, that yeah, no, that's interesting in and of itself right there. Well, real quick, let me actually just bring something up because I do know when it comes to like, for example, any well, really when it comes to anything about
Mhm.
the originals. Um, so one of the books that I read, and actually I got all my whole bookshelf right here. Some things you'll see where I have a bookcase like every other Christian on YouTube or something like that.
Yeah. You see my
But
bookcase back there.
yeah, but like this is a good book,
Yep.
which I recommend. It's written by Elijah Hickson and Peter J. Gurry,
Okay.
and even Peter Gurry in the book, and he actually talks about actually. Let me just see. I remember what page it's on. He was like, "Yep, there it is." So he, I got it here. So he actually reads about how it's worth mentioning how rarely editors of the Greek New Testament have to guess or conjecture, there's that word, what the original text is. So, in other words, how rarely editors have concluded that all our manuscripts are wrong and the original text is simply not to be found in any of them. Pretty much he's saying it's a bit overstating. And so and I've talked to people who was like, "Oh, you believe in a corrupted book? You know, you don't know if that's original or not." It's like, no, actually, according to the the study itself, it's actually where we can know very well what the original is. He actually, and I had it pulled up here. He actually
Yep.
said that he even mentions about the Nestle Allen. I don't know if you know what that is,
I
but
don't actually. And sorry if my volume is going in and out. I'm muting myself when I'm not talking. I'm at home today. This is like my day off, so I'm not at my usual spot. So I got a lot of
yeah,
background noise.
no, you're good.
But yeah, please enlighten me.
So Nestle Allen is one of the Greek and English New Testament that are used by people who study textual criticism. And he even so we have the this is the 28th edition. And I believe if I'm not mistaken that they're coming out soon with a 29th edition. But he even goes on to say where in the Nestle Allen, that's what that is, the 13th edition that was published in 2012, bear witness to the remarkable reliability of the New Testament text. And now we're at the 28th edition. So from the 13th edition, he says that the New Testament is very reliable. We know very well what the autographs, originals, however you want to say it, said. Now we have the 28th edition. And he said that was the 13th edition. So just do the math. And so when it comes to the idea about how like changing words, adding to it, or anything like that, it's that, in my opinion, to say that is a bit conjecture in and of itself. It's a bit of an overstatement to say you don't know what anything says because you don't have the original. It's just like, yes, we do. If you put in every, and I've said this so many times, it's almost becoming like I feel like a parrot. I keep on repeating it. But even if you were to name every contradiction or every textual variant, all of those things, like let's just say for the sake of arguments, not saying that is true, but let's say
Right.
for the sake of arguments, we just, that's all okay, said and well done. But you still have the essential Christian doctrines where there are no contradictions about it. Where did Jesus was Jesus crucified? Was he not crucified? There's no contradiction. He was crucified on all accounts. When it comes to the resurrection, all accounts say that there was an empty tomb. And then all accounts that talk about what happened afterwards say that the disciples experienced a bodily risen Jesus. So in all accounts, there was no contradiction about it. And I actually made a note about that as well because um, whenever it comes to multiple people, this is across the board, and this is written in the book that I just reference, Myth and Mistakes, but also reference in non-Christian sources, things like that. But they even go on to say about how with like they quote Dan Wallace, they quote Bart Ehrman, two of the biggest names in the field, right? And yet they both say the same thing, that they admit that the non-essential beliefs or practices seem like no, like pretty much not unaffected. And then actually in an interview, this actually was recorded where actually, just to put it on perspective, I have it on here on the Google Drive. Here it is. Let me get it pulled
There's
up.
also something I wanted to ask you about earlier,
Yeah,
because but I'll wait till you get done with this. But just keep this in your mind. I
sure.
remember about 2 weeks ago, because we're on Clubhouse a lot.
Yeah.
Maybe about 2 or 3 weeks ago, the Muslim that we interact with a lot, named Amir Blanco, on there,
Mhm.
he was misrepresenting something, and I was just like, man, like y'all should just debate about it. But it has something to do with this, didn't it? Like he was citing some kind of quote unquote scholar and was saying that, but I can't remember what it was about, but I knew it had something to do with textual criticism. Do you remember what that was specifically?
Yeah, so he was whenever we were talking about it, there was somebody that came on and it was like for the longest of time, like all the way back from like the 20s or something like that in the 1900s. It was like we cannot know what the autographs were. We cannot know what the originals say what pretty much whatsoever, like really reaching it. And so I actually quoted scholars that say no, we actually know for certain that no essential Christian doctrines are affected whatsoever. And so when you have even the Trinity is counted into that, by the way, and that's not affected by it either. Actually, as a matter of fact, when it came to Bart Ehrman, of all people, he was actually quoted about 1 John 5:7, which is a one that a lot of people use. And whenever it comes to it, let me see if I can find it real quick. Da, 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 da. Yeah, so Bart Ehrman was actually asked in an interview once about 1 John 5:7, and the guy who was asking him a question, it was like they were at a restaurant or something, and
Yep.
he was asked, if 1 John 5:7 is not original, then why do Christians still argue for the Trinity? And he just flat out says, because that's not the only verse that gives us the Trinity. He said every no Christian doctrine is based on one verse. And so, for example, if you want to talk about a textual variant like Mark 1:1, one of the ones that get brought up a lot is Son of God. But we do know with the book of Mark, across the board, he is called the Son of God in multiple texts. So it's not just based on one single verse, it's based on multiple verses throughout the New Testament. And so that's why it's never hinged on one verse. No doctrine is. And to say that because this one isn't original, or if you want to say there's a textual variant, that doesn't hurt us at all. We can just simply say, okay, if there are textual variants or anything like that, we have other verses that don't have any textual variants about it. And that's where actually, and I was trying to find it. if I can. Let me see.
Yeah.
Hold on.
What's interesting too, while you do that, I'll just speak on this a little bit with
Yeah.
in reference to Islam. What the Muslims fail to realize is that any book from antiquity will have some kind of variance within them. No book, it's not even possible. No book that is ever written from antiquity has zero variance. And when we're talking about variance, we're not talking about something to where it's like oh well, something is just completely different, like kind of like some of the examples we were given earlier. What we're talking about variances, and this is what I was talking to you on the phone the other day about. One will say JOHN, and then another manuscript will spell it JON.
Oh
That's an
yeah.
actual variant, right? So when we're talking about what a variant is not necessarily a contradiction, but a contradiction can be a variant. However, I believe the scripture is inerrant. I don't believe that there are any contradictions. However, we know for a fact that there are textual variants. That's just the way books from antiquity work.
And that
Muslims, yeah. Go
I was
ahead.
gonna say, and that's even when it comes to the Quran. I actually, where is it? I have a study Quran,
All right.
and if we
Thought you're gonna
ever
pull out that thing from Daniel Brubaker.
no, so I have this. It's an actual study Quran that's done in Islamic studies, and I have it highlighted where they actually talk about textual variants in the study Quran itself. And so it's like if you want to talk about perfectly preserved 100%, like there's no issues or anything like that, the Quran has it too. And
Yep.
so what's interesting enough is whenever you look at the footnote, for example, you have people who have brought this attention to the average person,
Mhm.
level, things like that. And the Islamic scholars are even talking about how it's an interpretation. And I hear all the time from people who are of the Islamic faith that I'll just call them Muslims. I didn't want to just point at it, but
I mean, that's
that's
what
what
they
it
are.
is.
They Muslims.
That,
Yeah.
that's what we're talking about. So that's
Right.
what it
Yeah.
is.
So we're talking about you guys. Yeah.
Yeah. So interesting enough, I have heard Muslims actually say it's not a state of history, it's an interpretation. And
Okay.
so if I actually open up to one of these textual variants, and I actually had a bookmark here. Here it is. The good old Kutila versus Katila.
All right. The
So
kill
it
or
yeah,
fighting or be killed and things like that.
yeah, chapter 3 verse 146, or however you say surah, all that
Mhm.
stuff. I'm not an Islamic scholar, so I
No,
just
you're okay, dude. I'm not an Islamic scholar either.
y'all know what I'm talking about, okay? So, anyways,
You said you said it's chapter 3. Which verse?
146 is the one that reads in this one.
Okay.
So this is in a commentary that's also in the study Quran, and it
Hmm.
says some read fight Qatala as were killed Kutala, in which case it would mean. And how many a prophet was killed while there were alongside him many devoted men.
Yep.
Al Tabari prefers this interpretation. So it's talking about how as it accords with the plain sense of the previous verses. And so again, I've heard Muslims talk about all the time that it's not a state of history, it's a state of interpretation. He just said that Al-Tabari prefers this interpretation.
Right.
But based off of what though? Because it
Yep.
follows in line with the more previous texts. Well, again, that's just based on interpretation. That's not based on actual history. And I'm not saying that that's wrong or anything. What
Mhm.
I'm just stating is that it's inconsistent on if you're saying that it's not a sense of history, it's a sense of interpretation. Well, if that's the case, then Islamic scholars are basing on off of interpretation,
Yep.
because that's literally what they say in their commentary in the study Quran. So,
I also wanted to I shared my screen. I don't know if you can add it to the stream really quick because I wanted to share this with you as well.
boom.
Yeah, awesome. So this is actually the verse that you brought up. So this is Surah Al Imran, ayah 146, and I just wanted to share this with people who may not know. And guys, real quick, if you're listening to this, because this is pre-recorded, so you're going to be listening to this on like the premiere feature on YouTube or however it is. Make sure that you guys like the stream,
Mm.
like the video, share it with your friends, comment under the actual video for the algorithm. We're not asking for anything else. We're just asking for likes and comments. And the reason why is because when you do that, it tells YouTube that you're enjoying this video, and it'll push it out to more people so they can get this information, because this information is not known. But I wanted to share this really quick because a lot of people don't know on Quran.com, there is a translation called the Fidel Solomon Briggs translation. And when you read it, it has all of the different qira'at, and it tells you. So in the original, most people read Hafs. Imagine how many devotees fought along with their prophets and never faltered despite whatever losses they suffered in the case of Allah, nor did they weaken or give in, right? But in the Fidel Solomon Briggs translation, he states that there is a qira'at, there's a variant. So qira'at is like reading, it's a different reading. And it says how many a prophet has had numerous godly people combating. If you click on the two right here, it tells you qira'at. Go down some. Qira'at. Nafai, Ibn Kathir, Abu Amr, and Yaqub read it as numerous godly people killed. So one involves people are just fighting. The other says that people are killing. So what they'll do is they'll say, okay, well, it kind of means the same thing. If you're fighting, then you're killing, right? Or so blah blah blah. However, this proves, so if you want to say that these variants are consolidated and that they complement each other in some kind of way, then cool. But now this proves that there's more than one Quran, because one reads it one way, one reads it the other. It destroys the standard Islamic narrative, because just because you fight somebody doesn't mean you kill them. Right. So you can fight and not kill, or you can fight and kill. So these are two different readings. I just want to give you guys one more, just so we can hammer this point in. I was on Reason Answers podcast last night with Thaddeus and with a couple of other brothers. Black Doctor was on there.
Shout out to Thaddeus.
Yeah, man, dude's awesome. I've reached out to him. He said that he would allow me to come on his stream and do give a presentation. I wanted to do a presentation on the crucifixion, kind of like the crucifixion according to Islam, and kind of like where they even got the idea from. But anyways, so I was on his podcast or his stream last night with Mary, Black Doctor, and some of the other brothers. And we had a Muslim come on, and he said the same thing they parrot. There's no variants or anything like that. This is one of the ones that I brought up. Are you familiar with this one, Hunter? Have you ever heard this one?
Let's see. Let me look.
This is Surah 37:12.
Oh, here. Let me actually edit this a little bit more so that I'm not. Boom. Okay. There. That way I'm not taking up the whole screen. No, actually, yeah. So actually, no, I'm not familiar with this one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this is one Avery actually got Logic Apologetics. He was the one who actually I first heard using this argument, and it's valid because okay, so we'll read it. In fact, you are astonished by their denial while they ridicule you. I wouldn't. This is a bad like FYI, I'm not an Arabic expert, but so what I'll do is I've been studying the language for a little bit under 2 years now. And I purposely started doing that because I've noticed that whenever I read a translation, they lie about stuff. And I got so tired of Muslims lying to me that I started to study the language. So I mainly study the Quranic Arabic. I don't really care too much about colloquial Arabic like the Mazari or like the Levantine dialect or anything like that. My main focus is just on the classical Arabic, the Quranic Arabic, what it says, and kind of how to understand it. So this word astonished, they've translated incorrectly. The Arabic verb is ajib, which means to wonder, to be shocked, to be amazed, right? And if you notice right here, this word, this is ajibta, it's being noticed. They have the right translation here. You wonder, but notice what they do. Mustafa Kitab, in his translation, he does astonished. And I'm going to explain to you why they do that. Um, so if you read it, so it says, in fact, you are astonished by their denial while they ridicule you. Now, there is a qira'at, there is a variant reading of this in the Hamza al-Qasai, in the Khalif. They read it as, and they translate it incorrectly again. Rather, I gravely noted as a ridicule. So I'm going to explain this really quick and then I'll pass it back to you. Sorry, I'm kind of
No,
taking
you're
over your
good.
stream.
No, no, no. It's fine. It's ours. So I'm
Um,
enjoying it.
yeah, so if we read it in Arabic, it reads Bal ajibta wasqarun, right? So what this is saying is like, so this word ajibta, when it has the um, fatha over the ta right here, it changes the speaker. So in this one, it is Muhammad. In fact, you, in reference to Muhammad, rather you are astonished by their denial, right? So Allah is saying that Muhammad is, I don't need to use the word astonished. Muhammad is shocked. He's surprised. He's wondering, right? He wonders, right? Or he's shocked, amazed, right? By their denial. And they even translate it correctly for this part, amazed. But now in the qira'at, in the Hamza reading, there would be a dhamma over this. And I can even pull it up in a second. I'll
Yeah, do
let
that.
you, I'll kind of get your thoughts on it before while I'm pulling it up.
Yep.
But when you put a dhamma over this, it changes the speaker. Now it's Allah, bal ajibtu or right? So now it's Allah being shocked, being amazed, wondering why they're mocking, right? So now we have two different readings. One is Muhammad is shocked. The other reading in the Hamza is Allah is shocked. And this is the reason. So I said I was going to come back to this. This is the reason why they won't render this correctly. They won't render it shocked or amazed, because now you have theological implications. So now you're saying that Allah can be shocked. If Allah can be shocked, that's a big issue because you can do something to catch Allah off guard. So this destroys this idea that there's only one Quran. If the Muslims want to go, and I'll let you kind of, because I'm curious as to what you'll say about this. If the Muslims want to say, hey, you know what? Okay, fine. There's variant readings. Yes, there are different Qurans or different readings that say different things, but we know that this is the most attested to reading because maybe there's more manuscripts that read this. Then fine, because we can say the same thing within Christianity. We have over 5,000 Koine Greek manuscripts, over 10,000 Latin, and thousands of other languages, all attesting to the same thing.
Right.
And we don't have, we can have 99 readings saying Jesus walked here, and one reading that says Jesus walked there. Well, we're going to go with the 99 as opposed to the one. So if the Muslims will be honest and say this book from antiquity, this is a reading, then fine, we'll give it to you. But since they want to consistently lie and say that there's only one reading of the Quran from the time of Muhammad to now, then we're just going to keep busting you guys upside the head with this. What makes this even worse is that this is on Quran.com. This isn't a Christian website. So what are your thoughts on this? I'm going to go and I'm going to pull up the actual reading for it so that you guys won't think that I'm lying. But like, what do you think about this? And kind of like, how do you think that, this will correlate to Christianity in terms of like manuscripts? I'm actually curious.
Yeah, so pretty much it's right on what you said, where it comes to if there are 99 manuscripts and you have one variant within these streams of, of manuscript tradition, so to speak, then we can actually tell where that actually came from. But it's almost like, if I'm not mistaken, it seems to be the case that 99% of Muslims believe that there is only one Quran, that there is no difference in letters or like no different whatsoever. It is 100% the exact same. Christians don't make that claim. We are very open to the fact that yes, we know that there are textual variants, but at the same time, even with the textual variants, Christianity is still true. no matter what, because that's what it shows us. And so if your faith is contingent on the idea that the Quran is perfectly preserved, there are no textual variants whatsoever, there are no changes in any letters or words or anything like that, then again, if it's contingent on that by itself, then you will not stay in Islam because of that. Except when it comes to Christians, we can still have textual variants, and we know where those textual variants are, and yet still Christianity is true because you still have, like I said before, the essential Christian doctrine. So either way, no matter what, when you talk about textual criticism or anything like that, or even contradictions, for example, because historically speaking, the even if you want to point out a contradiction or something like that, which again I don't agree that there are really any, if any at all. I haven't looked at every single one, just for the record. Um, and with that being the case, Christianity is still true because the core central doctrines
Right.
are still intact. And that's actually what I was going to show. So while you pull that up,
Mhm.
I was actually going to show this. Let me see. Whoop. So this right here, so this is where like it comes to textual criticism. Like well, let me just read it here. So sometimes the impression from the apologetic literature is that variants do not matter. Others are more careful to claim that no, I'm sorry, let me reread that. Others are more careful to claim only that no orthodox doctrine or ethical practice of Christianity depends solely on any disputed wording. And this is again from Myths and Mistakes. By the way, that's written by two PhDs. Um, and Peter Gurry, he's one that I enjoy reading. He graduated from Cambridge, and he was a student of Daniel as well. And he actually talks about how Daniel Wallace is even more precise, admitting that some non central beliefs or practices seem to be affected by viable variants, but that no viable variant affect any cardinal truth of the New Testament. Both qualifications, viable and cardinal, are important and match what we have here, called difficult and important variants. In this sense, Wallace is surely right that no core doctrine, e.g., the resurrection, the deity of Christ, salvation, the Trinity,
Mhm.
is based solely on a textual difficult passage. Even Bart Ehrman, and I have his quote too, grants that his own view is not a problem for this conclusion. He has said publicly that his view is not at odds with that of his mentor Bruce Metzger, which is that essential Christian beliefs are not affected by textual variants in the manuscript tradition of the New Testament. And I don't remember where I put that. Let me see. Oh, actually, let me get the quote for you here. I have it right here. So this is actually in Misquoting Jesus
Okay.
is the book that I have. And if I actually go to this, let me go to it. So for example, you brought up Amir, the Muslim we were talking to the other day. He talked
Mhm.
about how
I'm
where
listening to you, by the way. I'm
no, you're
pulling up
fine.
this information to share with you. Yeah.
No, you're fine. So he brought up about how it's a lie, that we can't know what the essentials are, or not the essentials, the originals say, or anything like that, and that in the same exact room where the whole conversation even started. They were all saying that Bart Ehrman changed his view, and the book that I just read from on the screen,
Mhm.
that's from 2019. He hasn't changed his view at all. So when all the entire group that I was talking to were saying that Bart Ehrman changed his mind, I asked for a source. I never got one. But then I'm bringing up a more recent source than misquoting Jesus, and it still quotes him saying that he still believes that and it's a more um recent source than
Right.
even what misquoting Jesus says. And here's, let me actually get what he said, because it's interesting. If I can find it. Oh, I think there it is. So this is actually what he said, and I'll read it. And one of the questions, let me just make sure. Okay, so the question he was asked was, Bruce Metzger, your mentor and a textual critic or textual criticism. By the way, I'm reading this and I have it highlighted right here. What he actually said of them quoting him when he said this. And this is in a Q&A section that was added to the back of the book, but nonetheless, it's still his book. And so Bart Ehrman published this answer. And he says, Bruce Metzger, your mentor in textual criticism, to whom this book is dedicated, has said that there is nothing in these variants of scripture that challenges any essential Christian beliefs. And this is where they're quoting, e.g., the bodily resurrection of Jesus or the Trinity. So he's even asked about the bodily resurrection of Jesus and the Trinity. And the question goes on to say, why do you believe these core tenets of Christian orthodoxy to be in jeopardy based on the scribal errors you discovered in the biblical manuscripts? And he goes on to say, and I'm quoting Bart Ehrman here, Bruce Metzger is one of the great scholars of modern times, and I dedicated the book to him because he was both my inspiration for going into textual criticism and the person who trained me in the field. I have nothing but respect and admiration for him. And even though we may disagree on important religious questions, he is a firmly committed Christian, and I am not. We are in complete agreement on a number of very important historical and textual questions. If he and I were put in a room and asked to hammer out a consensus statement on what we think the original text of the New Testament probably looked like, there would be very few points of disagreement. So even he notes that what we think the original text of the New Testament probably looked like, there
Right.
would be very few points of disagreement. And he's saying this about a Christian, Bruce Metzger, of all people, maybe one or two dozen places out of many thousands. And
Right.
this is the kicker. The position I argue for in Misquoting Jesus does not actually stand at odds with Professor Metzger's position that the essential Christian beliefs are not affected by textual variants in the
Okay.
manuscript tradition of the New Testament. So, even if you want to talk about corruption, that if you want to go to 1 John 5:7, or if you want to go to Mark 1:1, or if you want to go to other things like Acts 13, or people talk about with you know, the Great Commission, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, there's some manuscripts that have deteriorated over time, but we don't
Right.
know if it was there. But it's like that's a different story in and of itself. But nonetheless, Christianity still is true if you base it off of, you know, if what we believe in is based on a corrupted text because it's been changed over time, textual variants and everything like that. Again, if your belief in Islam is contingent upon that, then you will leave Islam the further you dive deeper into it. Because again, when it comes to it, I keep saying it over and over again. The core essential Christian doctrines, and I've in multiple sources, they were given examples, say that Trinity, the resurrection, crucifixion, deity of Christ, those are the those are counted as essential Christian doctrines.
Right.
Those are not affected. So at the end of the day, we still can have Christianity at its core doctrine, core value, and still be Christians today, despite all of despite any textual variant, really, because we we have what we have. And so that's where I was actually, because you actually had mentioned the whole, if John had an additional N or something like that, that's
Yep.
actually something that's
So
even
we're
brought
talking about
to
like the longer ending of
John.
of Mark or of John.
Yeah, the long yeah,
Yeah.
so that's a different one, by the way.
Yeah.
Um, but here's the funny thing about the longer ending of Mark is even if you have the shorter ending of Mark, there's there's multiple things that are still within Mark that are the essential Christian doctrines. You have the crucifixion, for one, Jesus was
Right.
crucified, and then if you have the shorter ending of Mark, you still have the empty tomb. So then you still have to explain the empty tomb, and then when it comes to the other gospels, depending on what you think the sources are for the gospels, whether you hold to the synoptic problem or synoptic gospels with John, anything like that, you still have multiple sources of the disciples experiencing a bodily resurrected Jesus. And but you still have the crucifixion and all the sources either way
Right.
that talk about, was he crucified, was he not crucified? All of them say he was crucified. And but what I was referring to was um how, oh, here it is, where John's name with one or two well, new is the letter that gives the N sound in Greek, and so
The new, yeah, I remember you telling me about that.
yeah, so and that's actually one of the most common textual variants the in all of it. Most of it is really just misspelling, but it doesn't change anything because whether it's John with two news or with just one new, it's
Right.
still John nonetheless. And when it comes to pretty much all textual variants and things like that, that's of the main ones. You have very few that are. Oh, I think. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I think my camera just I like that face though. I think my camera just actually
Oh, it froze. Yeah.
yeah, oops. Hang on. Let me fix that real quick cuz what's going to happen is
And by the way, when you're ready,
yeah.
I got all my stuff loaded up to kind of present the evidence and what I was talking about. And guys, I'll uh, on my stream, and I'll send these links to you too as well, Hunter.
Sure.
But when I air this on my channel, guys, I will put all the links to everything that I'm showing you in the description box so that you can have evidence and proof, and so that you can present the argument. Um, so yeah, so
Well,
whenever you're ready, I'll
yeah.
present.
Well, real quick, just when it comes to textual variants, it is helpful to keep two categories in mind, and the first is whether the variant is important for interpretation, and most variants don't affect the meaning of the text, but and that's what I was talking about with the spelling differences, with the changing of John,
Mhm.
whether it's two news or one new, and it pretty much think of it as like with English, with like a or an. It one ends with the letter N, one doesn't. Yet it doesn't change the meaning. But when it comes to these types of variants, they occur throughout manuscripts, but with any major edition of the Greek New Testament, like I noticed or like I showed with the Nestle Allen 28th
Mhm.
edition, I got so many books everywhere that um pretty much they will bear out page for page like the textual variants and everything like that. Yet they still write down what they believe is original, and they don't pose any threat to the Christian faith or to the Bible's inspiration. And what they just show is that scribes or readers were at times willing to make the text read more clearly. And so whenever it talks about um like text over time, you actually quoted that verse in the Quran where things are added or taken away or anything like that. If anything, I haven't seen to where any I haven't seen to where any manuscripts have like taken out, but instead where like for example the KJV versus NIV. A lot of people make the argument like NIV takes verses out of the Bible where the KJV originally had it in. Well,
Right.
that's not necessarily the case because of what's known as lectionaries, which those are manuscripts that have assigned scripture readings for various days of the week, and the lectionaries would add clarification to the text because they pull passages out of their larger context passages, and what they would do is they would often like use like well okay so just they would use like text but they would add clarification. Like for example, one of the ones that I found out about was Mark 6 in verses 31 through 8, or chapter 8 verse 26, where in the text it uses pronouns like for Jesus. We know this is Jesus because he's talking in chapters 4 and 5. And what a lot of lectionaries did, what a lot of lecturers did, is they added Jesus' name in there for clarification in the manuscripts, even though originally we know that it didn't use the name Jesus. But what ultimately happened was they would add the nouns there to identify who the person is in view. But the majority of the later manuscripts, they're the ones that add Jesus into it. And so when we go back to the earlier witnesses, the referent there is still Jesus. Like all of that is still the same. It's still replying to Jesus. They didn't really add anything that changed the meaning of the text or anything like that. They just add that for clarification to their readers because they're not going all the way back to Mark 4 or Mark 5 or anything like that to show that this is Jesus here that's being referred to here. And so
Right.
that's an example of how we can know with like adding over to it. And again, it's a bit overstated to say that it was changed over time. With the KJV, for example, that have the additional text in it, at most it's 2%. That's it of the entire New Testament. When you take that 2% away, we can actually get, again, like what was said before about the 28th edition and the 13th edition of Nestle Allen, we can know very well what the originals say. And I've quoted sources, recent sources, this is scholarship today, that say that we can know what originals say.
Right.
So we
You
have
know,
that.
I'm gonna have to go in about 5 minutes.
Yep.
But I just wanted to say, this is why it really helps to understand what you believe and why you believe it, not just like a surface level, like, oh well, somebody said I should be a Christian or my mom's a Christian. Or when we actually get down to the crux of our faith, it's not just experiential, it's not just anecdotal, it's actually backed up by historical facts, backed up by strong textual proofs. Textual criticism comes against it, and it still is able to hold water. It still stands its ground. So, guys, just make sure that this isn't something that's passive to you, like that. This is something that you actually are taking serious. That this is something that is actually important to you, and share the information. I'll just share this one last thing, and
Yep.
then off quick. Um, so I don't know if you can share. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Let me see. I'll because I just want to provide everybody with what I was saying. I don't think that I'm lying. Let me know. Okay,
Yep.
great. So this is a website that I use for like you can look at it for like textual variants and things like that. Quran.com. And again, on my stream, I'll provide the links and stuff in the description, but I'll also send them to Hunter, so they'll be under his description as well. But so right here, this is one of the qira'at. So notice it says Khalif and Yusuf. I mean Khalif and Hamza. I'm sorry. So this is like Khalif on the authority of Hamza. And notice right here, I'll zoom in a bit. Bel Ajibtu, there is a Dhamma over top. But on Quran.com, notice here there's a Fatha, right? So it changes it. It changes the
Mm.
meaning. Now, this is what would be a qira'ah, a different reading. This is a variant. Again, Khalif on Hamza. So this is Khalif on the authority of Hamza. Here, sorry, I'll put it right here. So again, right here, you can see that these were so like the people that were in the Qur'an reading on this website right here on Quran.com. If you look at it, Hamza al Kasai and Khalif right here. So what I want to do really quick as well, it's completed. What I want to do really quick as well right here is um, I want to also share this tab so that you can see that it does mean like wonder, or to be amazed at something, as opposed to what they do here is gravely no. I don't even know what that means. Gravely noted. I don't know why they would put that. Or I mean, you could say astonished, yes, but wonder would be a more, to be shocked or to be amazed, to wonder would be a more accurate translation. Here's a website that I use. Um, a good brother in Christ of mine, Jai from Jai Apologetics. He sent me this website. This is like an Arabic, like almanac, lexicon, dictionary. You type in the root word and it'll give you the definition. So I was able to type in right here ajib right here, and it gives you like a like right here. So it says la ajib, or la ajiba, which means like no wonder. So it's like a euphemism almost in this sense when you put la in front of it. It's kind of like no wonder, dude. Or no wonder, my dear la ajib, ajiba habibi, or something like that, right? So essentially right here, you can see that it means to wonder, right? Astonishing, revelation. So if we go back here and we're looking at it, we're understanding the argument, it wouldn't necessarily be an issue for Muhammad to wonder. But now it's problematic because now Allah is wondering. He's he's in a mate. Like what? Like what is Allah wondering about? What would God, in a sense, in this sense, be shocked about or be amazed about? right? Like what would catch Allah off guard that he has to wonder, like what are these people doing in a sense. um but nonetheless, even if you want to say that's not an issue because maybe you're ascribing anthropomorphic features to Allah, even though the Muslims say there's nothing like Allah. He's all wise, all knowing. What do they say? They say uh off the top of my head. I think it's like Walabakul Shayin Alim, which means like he's like all knowing, all wise. Yet in this situation, he has to wonder about something. Yeah, I believe it's Wallah Bakul Shayin Alim, which means like he is all wise.
Hmm.
But anyways, essentially, the argument here would just be, okay, so what is he wondering about? But even if you want to go, if you're going to ascribe anthropomorphic features to Allah, it still becomes problematic because you still have the issue of, well, these are two different readings. Like one reading is this, one reading is that, and they are not the same. And I'll just share this one last thing, just for further evidence. So this is a website called Conjugator, like cool, like as in dude, that's cool. Jugator up here. This is a website that you can go to. You type in Arabic verbs, and it'll give you the conjugations in every tense. So here we have right here. So this is in the past tense. Because he's wondering. He wondered. Notice. So anna. So this is like I. That's what you would use for like like I'm like. So for instance, if I say anna masihi, like I'm a Christian, right? Enna is for I. Um, so like I. So I wondered. Ajib too. You see it here. So the speaker is Allah. So that's why it has Ajib too. He's wondering. Like Allah is shocked. Someone's catching him off guard. He's wondering why, like what's going on here. But when it's in the you, enta, notice you have the fatha over here where it says you. So that's why in the reading
Interesting.
in the Hafs, when it's reading it, because Allah supposedly talking to Muhammad, and he's saying that you wondered, right, Muhammad. So he says bal ajibta, like you're wondering, but this one says bal ajibtu. It changes. One is Allah speaking, one is um Muhammad speaking. So again, I'll put all of these links in my description at the bottom so you can check those out. And I'll send them to my brother Hunter here so he can put them under the description as well. But um I'll just say this one last thing before I go. Guys, notice how important it is to understand these arguments and to present them correctly. And notice how important it is for you as a Christian to understand why what you believe and understand the scholarship that goes behind these things. Because Hunter, he was able to beautifully explain to us like the scholarship behind this, the textual criticism, and
I
all
had
it's going to
example.
do.
Yeah, I had examples too, but we ran out of time. So,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
I,
we're definitely gonna have to do this again, man,
oh
because
yeah,
it's gonna take at least 2 hours.
yeah, for sure.
Maybe it'll take 2 days. We'll just do a 48-hour long live stream where we'll never
Whew.
sleep.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
We'll eat 10 ajwa that day or something. We'll just stay up all day. But
Lots of coffee.
Right, lots of coffee. But it's just this stuff is important, guys. So,
It is.
understand, your dean, understand why you believe what you believe. You don't even have to be a native Arabic speaker. Like look at me. I've been studying it for less than 2 years. But what I do is I take the time, lots of time, to make sure that I understand what's being said and understand like the tenses and all this stuff, because it matters. You never know when you present this information to somebody how it'll be able to bring them out of the darkness into the glorious gospel, into the glorious light of the gospel of Jesus Christ.
Yeah. And also to kind of piggyback off of that, when it comes to knowing what your foundation is, knowing how strong your structure is, this is one of the things that really help build that up when you get into these conversations, or when you are given these kind of things from people who are not of the same kind of background. And so by studying and actually knowing what is being said, how these things work. You don't have to go and get a PhD to know this stuff. Like, I mean, there are sources out there. I just showed two sources, both Christian and non-Christian, that say the exact same thing, that are books that people can just go and buy. It's not just something that you can just learn from a college. It's something that you can know here and now. And if you need sources, you have people here that are willing to help, that are willing to give you those sources and to show you exactly what it is that people do say. Because I was going to go into example with like Acts 13 verse 33, for example, where there's like three understandings, and because of the way the wording, like, just real quick, just to give this example, um it's what's known as, it's pretty awkward since the way that some of the phrases are made in some textual variants, but the wording in such cases like this is what seems to be the earliest, is easy to reconstruct because you have of this what's known as a nonsense error. So it makes no sense. It's awkward within the text. So you have these criterias, so to speak, to know what was actually originally said. And because of these things, we know what's originally said. We can have a strong foundation to stand on. Christ still lives according to all the text when it comes to any proclaimed contradiction, textual variant. Christ still lives according to the essential Christian doctrine of the faith from the beginning. And
Yep.
I can go into oral tradition as well with that as well. I've done a study on that also. And again, guys, this is all out there. You
Yep.
just got to go and research. Don't let your doubts become your conclusions. Study this stuff. See if there are any sources or anything that helps you reconcile these issues, because this has been going on for 2,000 years. Heck, even to Muslims, I would even say, like, study hard, because I actually enjoy an honest conversation, to where if I am speaking to a Muslim who is very studious within the field, then I am willing to listen because they have studied so much, they're able to reconcile. But that way, we can actually show what is true at the end of the day. That's how we can get down to this, and that's why I'm studying New Testament, just because I want to know whether it's true, and from my studies and from my research, I believe it's true, and so that's why I'm a Christian, and I'm willing to have that conversation. So if you know how to reach
Yep.
me. The link's down in the description if you want to contact me to have a conversation or anything like that. But other than that, it's been real good. This has been a good study. Of course, an hour
Yep.
doesn't do its justice, but we gotta,
Suffice, right?
yeah. So we
Yeah,
gotta.
I got. Yeah, my,
What's
my
that?
my weekends are so tentative, so that's why I'm like, I hate to. What we'll probably have to do is maybe do something during the weekday, or if you ever get some time. But yeah, man, it was awesome. We're gonna have to do this again. There's definitely gonna be a part two,
Oh yeah,
where we're going over some of the other quote unquote um contradictions, or some of the quote unquote issues where textual criticism is concerned. But yeah, man, I'm gonna go ahead and get out of here. But
yeah, man.
guys, definitely, if you haven't already liked the video for both of our streams,
Subscribe.
um, subscribe, right? Comment under the actual video. Again, this is just for the algorithm. That's the only thing that we're asking from you guys. We're not asking for anything else. It'll just help to get this message out to people as well.
Yeah. Also, leave a comment because again, I enjoy the conversation. So if you wanted to just leave a comment just to ask a question or to
Mhm.
make me think of something, have me think of something, I'd love to read them. I try to read all my comments if I can, and let's just have the conversation, because it's not necessarily, for me, when it comes to it, it's not just, I love doing this. I love having the
Yep.
conversation. So if you want to leave a comment, like, subscribe, let's, get this around so that we can build more fruitful conversations for this kind of stuff. And so with that, I think we're pretty good. So there you go.
Yep. All right, man. All right. Well, it was nice talking to you guys. For those of you who are still here, if you're still watching the replays, and it was good talking to you, Hunter. We'll
Yeah.
we'll definitely do this again, man.
Yeah, you as well, man. God bless and take care.
All right, you too. God bless. See
God
you.
bless. See you.